How many audits have you done? Do you know more or less how many performance audits you've done?
I can get you that number, but I don't know the number off the top of my head.
Because I know 4 years ago when we discussed, you were with us as well, that was something you stressed, and I at that time thought it was a great idea. 140 million in savings obviously lends itself to that, but I'm also curious as to how widespread those performance audits were performed.
I can tell you that roughly half, might be 45%, might be 55%, but roughly half of the money came from our state performance, our state performance audits, which there were 4 of those. Then the remainder were from local audits, which remain voluntary. There's enough local governments in Ohio that we don't go in and somewhere where we're not invited. And those tend to be relatively smaller numbers. Brittany, do you have any idea how many performance audits we've done currently as a number?
I want to say there's an average of about 30 a year on the
Yeah,
local side.
that's a good point. It's about right.
On your piece of campaign literature, we were just talking about food stamp fraud. We had a story in our paper, and it came from, local law enforcement, that basically, food stamp cards were the primary currency in the local heroin trade. And one of the things that I found kind of amazing that talk to other people, that when you use a food stamp card, you are not required to use any kind of identification. Is there any way of, every cop we talked to said, whenever they find somebody with paraphernalia, they're most likely finding a food stamp card with somebody else's name on it. And they kind of just believe there's nothing we can do about it. You talk about food stamp fraud here. What have you done, and what can you do to, and the most amazing thing about it is that the story didn't seem to have much traction because everybody in town said, "Oh yeah, that's the way it operates."
Great question. Our work focused on supposedly lost cards that were then reissued. Although you don't have to have an ID under the current law, you do have a PIN. Now, of course, the problem with a PIN is you can give somebody your personal identification number, and they do. I just got a report, however, that where we had thousands of cards that had been stolen and then quote-unquote stolen or lost and then replaced multiple times, 5, 10, even 20 times, since our report was issued, that has slowed to a trickle. So that's a plus. At the same token, the federal government covers the eligibility and transactional rules for SNAP, and the state has very limited authority to increase security protocols. Having a photo ID is just a basic kind of thing that ought to happen. I mean, if we're going to go to the cost of issuing a SNAP card, is it all that hard to go ahead and issue a free photo ID with it?
Or put a photo on the card.
Or put the photo on the card. I think not. And so all the arguments about photo identification, is a bad thing. I disagree. There doesn't need to be a barrier to obtaining that photo ID, but we have to get federal government approval to change that. And I might add that it's not under my office's jurisdiction to be able to apply for that waiver or to grant it.
So how is it under your jurisdiction to deal with stolen cards?
Well, we have the ability to audit. We just don't have the ability to change the things that we find. So we're kind of like Fox News. We report, you decide.
What about Pete brought this up, and it's a topic I've been hearing about it for as long as I've been in business, but it's gerrymandering, and he said that